Yeah, okay. All right, let's call the meeting to order. The Water Management Committee meeting, regular meeting on October 26th at 3:02. Sorry for the delay. All right, committee or public comments? Mike, got anything today? No? Okay. Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. I was at the meeting. I don't think there's a lot to report from it. I know that they were pretty proud of the signing of the law of AB 779. And I'm sure if you read the paper at all or see the paper, you'll see what Keith Lemieux has to say about 779. And all I can say is that the Water District doesn't necessarily agree with that. It's going to be up to a judge to make the decision of how it applies and how it doesn't, but we don't see where it really is applicable to many things. That was the big thing I remember, because that seems like what they were really pretty proud of. Also, they are recommending the class action be put together for the, not class action, but the representation of all of the independent pumpers. And they said 832, or I hear 832, 852, I'm hearing 872, however number it is, for the adjudication, and they want to have Don Decker represent them. So they're proposing to the court that Don Decker represents the independent pumpers in the adjudication, because the government has to make sure that everybody's included. Although if you look at any other adjudication in the past, the judges always include the rights of independent pumpers as well as independent landowners. So you always make some provision in adjudication saying, hey, we know we have people pumping out there. This is what's going to be allotted to them. And we know people have a lot of land out there. So if and when they request to drill a well, there's going to be water available for that. So the fact that for some reason, I think they just want to make a decision as to whether they have to be represented or they're going to be considered anyway, because I know that the district is not challenging that at all. And so I'm not sure the tactic behind this is what I'm saying and how it's going to come out. But they'll be arguing that December, no, it's moved into, I can't remember the date, December something. So they have to have everything in place for that. So that's what's going on with the GA. And I'll be at the meeting next week. So lucky me, I'll see what they're pulling out of their hat here lately. I don't know where they are with the pipeline project. Oh, good. You're rescuing me, Mike. You got something? Yeah, is that one on? Tap, tap. No, is there a button on the side or anywhere? It's green? There,
I don't know about
there we go.
all that. Okay.
There we go. We got it.
We got it.
All right.
Okay, concerning what you just talked about, I think the private well pumpers are well served having Mr. Decker, quote unquote, represent them, I guess, as their spokesperson. But did I not read in the news review that Keith Lemieux is saying that he needs to be the attorney for that particular group?
They're arguing that the GA attorneys need to represent that group because there's no conflict that way.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I see that, but
Well, I'll tell you how I see it. I say to any of the private well water pumpers who are in that group, you better watch your backside, because Lemieux and Phil Hall have been the primary movers and shakers on this whole deal from day one, and I don't see anybody, any pumper other than the county, the city, and the base getting a good deal out of this GA actions at all. So, if private pumpers didn't like the idea years and years ago
That's
of
right.
putting meters on their wells so they can report usage, well, wait till you see what happens when Lemieux gets rolling. So I'd say they better get together and get Don Decker, stand up and say, no, we want to pull some funds together and get a different attorney. Because I would definitely be yelling for that if I was a private well pumper.
But you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. They're asking the judge that the GA be able to appoint one of their lawyers to represent that group. And I don't know how far that'll go, because they claim they don't have a horse in the race, they say. So they can represent them that way if they like. I believe that's all that went on. There's some still discussion coming up about the Byerly well. I don't know if that's coming up, if they've got their information together. But again, it's a well that it's the pump quit pumping because no one knows for sure it was cavitating, let's say, and it turns out there is water in the well. But the driller has recommended that, well, if we're going to put a new pump in there to get down to the water level, we might as well go deeper. So it hasn't gone dry, and I think Chuck Griffin tried to make that claim. He says, I'm tired of hearing that every well out there that has an issue, you guys keep saying it's dry. You're trying to convince everybody all kinds of wells are going dry. So one thing I forgot to look for today, I know that the GA in the GSP made a prediction, I believe, on number of wells drying and how often. And if I remembered the graph, they're saying each year how many there were going to be. And we must be into somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 15 right now, supposedly. And I only know of one that had to be deepened. See, so I'm not sure about that. But anyway, they're really pushing that really hard, that all these wells are drying, the whole valley's drying up. So that's what's moving on with them. And I see we have here discussed feasible alternatives at a pipeline project. I think we continually do that. Everybody has ideas about how we could make this work without putting in a $200 million plus pipeline. And in light of where they're asking for money, they're going to the federal government. They're asking for 75% of the total cost. And the reason they did that is because they want to get the project done quicker. There's actually grants available where they could get 100%, although I have to admit for the 100% project, it would have to be designed and run by the government. And so the way they went, but you still got to come with 25% to almost $300 million. And I don't know where that is, with the federal government now spending money left and right on wars or potential wars. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Yeah, they'll just print it, won't they? All right. I don't have anything else on this subject. All right. What do we know about are they still releasing water in the aqueduct that you know of? Or they finally stopped? Okay. Because I knew last time we met they still were. And so they've stopped. All right. And I know that we discussed the feasibility of working with IWVWD on a method in the future so they don't have to worry about flooding. And I was hoping George would be here to see if he's made any progress on that. But obviously not. Recycled water. Again, I was going to ask George if he's made any progress on that. However, at the last GA meeting, it was brought up again about trying to establish some sort of a fund or something to get the money to reduce recycled water. And again, the board actually voted on they're not going to go in that direction. So the recycled water project is just sitting there. And what we're encouraging to do, and I'm doing some of this for the benefit of Mike, is that the water district re-up their talks with the city to get the recycled water. Now, one thing that scares me a bit is when they went to the detailed cost analysis of putting this thing together and how much money they would need for it at the last meeting, they talked about purchasing, you'll like this one, purchasing the wastewater from the city. So whatever's going to happen include a purchase price for the wastewater. That's going to be a stumbling block, in my opinion. I know what you're saying. I know a lot, yeah. And so keep your eyes open for that one. So evidently that project is not going to happen with the GA, and I think they made it official. I can't remember if they voted on it. I think they needed a vote at the time to either start looking for money or to not, and they decided not to, because they're coming up with over $5,000 per acre foot, way different than what we've come up with. Even though ours may be more than the original 22 or 2,300, it isn't 5,000, because I'm sure the purchase of the water from the city was quite expensive. Oh, there he is.
My apologies, it was not on my calendar.
Uh-huh. I don't know whose calendar you were looking at. I get new ones every couple of weeks from somebody, and they're always updated.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my own. I'm used to a different calendar system.
No. So we're on recycled water. Yes, Mike.
So my position from day one, and hope the district's position, is every pretty much every drop, I believe, that's a fact, of water that goes into the city's wastewater plant was pulled out of the ground and paid for to get into the system by district water users. And that's their water. That's, and this baloney about, well, once it becomes in possession of the city, it becomes the city's, water. And now, of course, Ron Strand, he wants to charge whoever he can charge to buy the water from the city. Who's going to pay for the recycled water plant? Well, guess again, it's going to be the same water district people that pay to pump the water out of the ground and get it into their house and then flow it back down to the sewer lines. So they pay to bring it up. They're going to pay to get the recycled water plant going, running, the ongoing costs for running it, it's everything, every single dime. It's the district's water. That's all there is to it. And the district should take the strongest possible position that's our water. You're just letting it flow through your plant. When it comes out, we want it, and we want it credited to our water use, allocation to budget, and fight for that because they've already made it obvious how it's going to go. They want to make a cash cow for either. It looked like the GA originally, I guess now they've changed their mind. They're going to let the city try to make a cash cow out of it. And they don't need to get a dime out of that plant for the water coming out of it, not a cent.
Thank you, Mike. George, the reason he came up with that is because at the last GA meeting, if you listen to it, is when they discussed not doing the recycle again. Remember, they had a long discussion about looking for funding, and they went through the exact analysis of where they needed funding. Part of the money they needed in the operation of the project was purchasing the wastewater from the city. And I remember that's why that came up. I want to make one more comment, Mike, and this is and I make this comment a lot, not just here, but publicly I talk to people. The GA has become a cash cow for the city. They bill for all their legal fees. They bill for the use of the facility, which I don't have a problem with, but the legal fees bother me because of the agreement that they were going to be in kind. In fact, when you see reimbursement for in-kind services, isn't that sort of a oxymoron? And then, of course, now they want to be paid for the wastewater. So the GA is becoming a source of income for the city. That's all I had to say about that, and I will continue to say it.
I'll make one comment as well. I had an offline discussion with the city, and it appears they're going to build a new wastewater treatment plant. I think what they indicated was that because they didn't get authorized funding for the recycled water portion of that they were going to build facilities that were available so that there could be recycled water and reuse, but they weren't there wasn't funding available, I guess, at this time for them to build the actual RO units or whatever type of treatment is required. I believe that leaves the door open for us to do as you advised, which is to advocate, to be the people that maybe figure out a way to make that happen. I hope that can happen cooperatively at some point in time.
Yes.
And so we appreciate your comment, and I think hopefully there's a chance that we can get engaged on that water and figure out a way to be the people who maybe build, own, operate, whatever the right scenario is to get that water reused.
I don't remember, I told everyone here, but when I was at the meeting, the GA put this to bed finally, because they had the presentation, a detailed presentation by engineering and of course, then Capital Corps about getting the funding. And based on the engineering analysis of being in like $5,500 per acre foot, the GA, I can't remember where they voted the project's null and void with the GA now, officially, so for sure. And they're not going to go looking for the money. They said to Capital Corps, we don't bother looking for it, don't put in a request for it, we're not going to do it. So this is the second time they've said that, though. And so this is, again, an open door for us to make noise about it. But the one I would be aware of is the fact that the city thinks they're going to sell that water. And I have a problem with that. Because, I mean, if we're all in this together for the benefit of the community, obviously someone else is going to be on the hook for paying for the facility to either treat the water to whatever amount we need to treat it to, and we agree to do. So we'll be working that one again. So hopefully you'll talk to the city again now since their last meeting, see if they're interested in beginning our talks again. And basically, to me, we're going back to square one where we were 3 years ago. because we were on that track. And then
And ultimately, the real catch here is you would hope that we find a use for that water that directly offsets current withdrawals from the aquifer, thus reducing the draw on the aquifer. That would be the ultimate goal and the best outcome. Now, certainly there's other mitigating things, like some of that water may need to be reserved for other uses that are currently used.
But
we'll figure that
the
out.
base has dibs to, for the chewy chub.
Yes, that's what I was
Which,
talking
yeah,
about.
for the chewy chub, they gotta get their acre foot. And I think there may be some allotted for the golf course, and it isn't a lot, but it still amounts to somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 acre feet, although their report said it was only 1,500. It's always been around 2,000 acre feet available to us. So the report all of a sudden dropped considerably on the water available. But I think this is an open door, we need to look at it. And heck, when we start doing our engineering analysis again on it, we might find out it's not worth doing. But let us determine that. I just don't think 5,000, I think they had $5,500 per acre foot is what they estimated.
Well, I think there's, when you talk about the potential for, when you do that cost analysis, I think you have to look at the potential for, could this offset other greater costs?
Right, yeah.
In a sense, so like sometimes you spend a lot of money here, so you don't spend a ton of money over here.
And how much is the city charging that in that analysis for their water? Quite the thing. I'm gonna step back to number 4 just to see, George, this is the aqueduct releases that we agreed that we'd continue to approach LADWP about, making sure in the future that we could be prepared here, whether it be injection wells or it be, I'm not sure what kind of well Chuck was talking about. I'm gonna call it injection well. Renee, he wants to drill a few hundred feet so it gets into let's let it drain that way. I don't know what that involves, but I don't know where you are on that. I know that we had talked about discussing coming up with some preliminary ideas and costs, what it would cost to do something like that.
Yeah, so, you look at that and you say that, as I understand it, the aqueduct is high enough in elevation that you can generate some pressure head if you run water off of that.
Right.
Talking to some of our consultants, they then went a little further.
But
and
Phil
said-
Hall said that's not true.
Okay. Talking with our consultants who are engineers, they said that if you did have injection
Strike that
wells-
from recording, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you did have injection wells, that the natural pressure without having to do a lot of electrical
Yeah.
pumping and pressurizing, particularly in that first region off the mountain front where, you might be able to drill down and get into the deeper aquifer and do some re-injection. It's possible, things to be explored, because then
Well-
you're using basically natural gravity forces to push water into the aquifer that LADWP would have otherwise naturally released, so those things are certainly,
So they're ripe for speaking to. Now, it's ripe for the picking. They're ready to talk. And they want to come up with something. And like, if we remember in the past, when they wanted to do water banking, they were willing to pay for all the injection system, everything, which was $55 million at the time. That's a pretty good chunk of change. However, when it comes to water banking, what happens there is you make a deal that if we only get a certain percentage of what they bank. And I've heard numbers as high as 10%, as low as 5%, not much higher than 10 or 15%. So the fact that if we can come up with a system where, oh yeah, you just open your gates and we're gonna make sure we get it all and be able to take it all, hopefully because what they released now, about 15, I'm guessing around 15,000 acre feet this year. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how you're proceeding with that, George, if you need help on it. It may be something that it may be worth a call to Don too, with all his contacts, or Tim, and also Chuck Krieger. They were all sort of involved with that. But I think that we need to strike while the iron's hot on that one, because that's a lot of water that's available.
agreed.
All right, so brackish water, we're down to number 6 already. I'm not sure there's anything to say on that. I'm not sure where the project is or if they're wrapping it up. I know they're wrapping everything up they have, getting the last payments
A
from.
pretty lengthy brief.
Did you?
So
Okay.
they are wrapping it up.
Keep it, don't make it lengthy though. Brief us on the short version.
The short version is unless the Navy agrees to let significant exploration and drilling of brackish water occur on Navy property, it's not likely to happen.
So they don't want to
The
do it.
Navy has their own reasons for
Yeah,
being shy about that, and we don't say that those reasons are unjust. We just say that where the brackish water exists and where the opportunities are that might be cost effective appear to be located on Navy property. They have a mission out there. There could be some conflicts, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna go anywhere soon unless the Navy decides they wanna pursue it.
Their problem is they're worried about subsidence, especially under the snort track.
Yep.
That's one of their biggest things. But I understood that this project was still gonna try to do a test, even, there's other brackish water available, and they were gonna use it, even though it may be not the purer form that you would find under the base. So they could do actually a test plant to prove the system.
Yeah,
That was supposed to be their next step.
yeah, am I correct in assuming though that the funding for that particular project runs out this year, is that correct?
Just for the,
Is that the study portion?
yeah, just for the study portion.
The feasibility.
Feasibility study,
So
yeah.
then, if we wanted to go on to do an actual pilot project, that would require an additional
Right.
funding request? Do you think we should make that funding request and do it?
I talked to the group that's working on it, you know, the group that's putting it together, and see if they, I think isn't Anthony Brown, isn't he?
Oh,
you're gonna
Wade
get-
Major is the one
Wade
who's
is?
leading that up, but yeah, the problem was finding a location to do it
Yeah.
with an adequate enough type of, brackish
I know
water.
they did one exploration and
Mhm.
they came up, it unfortunately came up, the water was far more, brackish than.
Do they still want to do a
It's-
pilot plant, do you know?
It's, if you could find a place to do it.
Okay, yeah, shoot Wade an email, just say, are you interested in a pilot plant? You know, just sort of keep us updated. I thought they wanted to do one.
Yeah,
When we did ours, were you here when we did our? Is that not a location they could do one in, that they have similar water?
at Neil Ranch again,
Yeah,
we didn't find the water there to be as brackish as originally thought. The more we pumped the water, kind of
cleaned up.
It cleaned up. It ended up, we thought it was going to be around 3,000 parts, TDS, and ended up getting down to about 1,200.
How do they know the TDS of the water that's under the base? There's nothing there, is there? That's ever drawn from it?
Well, there's a lot of monitoring wells out there.
Yeah, so they got some pretty deep ones, don't they?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, and that's supposed to be a fairly low TDS for brackish water. That's why it makes the ideal location to draw from. It's not so high in solids that it makes the system bulkier, more expensive and such. It's a pretty much ideal one. And that's why I'm wondering whether, we have something, because I think they ought to move ahead. Although I do agree it's not considered new water.
What would be the process to fund it if we were to advocate for more funding? I mean, who fund?
The
I mean,
state funded.
The state funded this
Yeah.
one, yeah, but
And I'm not sure under which grant or,
I would definitely talk to Wade
Yeah.
about it, because he's got the insight into all that, and it was difficult just to get some water out of the
Yeah.
Bureau rec wells that we were able to get access to, and the water quality profile wasn't exactly what we were looking for. Were we able to really get enough volume out of there?
I hate to see all the time, effort, and money spent in that project, they drop dead with it. It'd be nice if they could do not after the study, basically do a pilot plant, a small pilot plant, prove the system, and then have a better idea, because I've always said that if they can prove the system, maybe the base would be very interested in putting this on the base.
I mean, we've done a pilot,
Yeah.
back in '06 is when we did that.
Same technology?
Pretty soon it was RO,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it was electrodialysis
To get
reversal
to the zero
to zero liquid
discharge.
discharge.
That was the expensive part.
Yes. So, but I think in this case they were planning to do like 2 ROs, like one followed by another.
Right, and they were also.
A train of ROs.
Right, and they weren't gonna go to a dry phase, they were gonna sell the affluent to COSO Geothermal and to Cerro Valley Minerals. So they were part of the project as well,
Yeah.
2 big players. So, and I could talk to Chris next time I see him too. I haven't seen him in a while, and see what he thinks about all this.
He was originally part of this,
Okay.
yeah, at COSO.
Have you had a chance to meet Chris Ellis yet? You might, maybe you did at the
Is he from
development, what's it called, the
economic?
economic development, yeah.
I have.
That's- yeah, Chris is on the board along with Scott O'Neill, and yeah.
Okay, and he represents COSO?
Coastal Geothermal.
Yeah, I'm trying to set up a tour out there at some point,
Yeah.
so I was working, I was working.
He's a very valuable source of information about that area up
He
there.
would be the one to set that up for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
but let's move ahead on that. I don't want to lose track of that, but if I had to say the importance of what we're looking at here, number one right now, because the timing is the aqueduct, And then right behind that is the recycled water. And in brackish water, obviously, there's going to be more studies on it. Okay. Anything else on that, George, in brackish water? That's what you have?
That's what I had to
Okay.
brief.
Alternate water sources, and we talked about taking this off, but Chuck wants to leave it on about possible the sub-basin in the El Paso area. And I don't know where we are with that. I'm not sure what's going on.
We don't have a budget for it right now.
Yeah, what?
No budget for it right
No
now.
budget, well, I don't think that you did. I think they're looking at what's the possibility and how would it happen. Because and Chuck's the one that's kept this on here, and he may be right. It's some kind of a sub-basin that at this particular point may be overflowing into the Fremont, and we could be tapping some of that water, which help us. And it goes along with also spreading our pumping type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say this is definitively, but I did see some information about the amount of rainfall that falls within our watershed and the amount that ends up, in the aquifer. And it's like, if you could increase the amount of rainfall that gets into the aquifer by like 1%, you would more than, offset any need for other stuff. It's the amount of rainfall that falls, it just runs away and then evaporates away. So capturing rainfall is not easy. Getting it into the groundwater is not easy, but when you look at the volumes, and of course they're spread over huge areas, that's the really difficult part. And you got to catch the stuff that actually flows and doesn't just soak into the ground. But yeah, there's there's always that potential there.
Yeah, the thing about that particular there is that for the few wells that they have where they monitor, you're seeing the levels going up. They very seldom go down. The levels go up. So, and to simplify it, I always think of it as an elevated sub-basin. It sort of sits up here.
Yeah.
And so what happens is it rises and lowers based on its usage. And when you have a lot of flow like you do now, it tends to flow into Fremont Valley. In fact, I believe Fremont tried to take that portion of the aquifer at one time, because you could apply to the state to do studies, and they wanted that portion of the aquifer. So that tells me that if some pumping can occur there, whether we just gravity bring it down here, do something with it, then there may be water there that could be used, and we can spread out our pumping. And I think that's what Chuck had in mind. So I don't know, we're not really doing a lot of work on that, Renee, at this time. I think maybe Tim might be looking at trying to get some analysis from the GA about the well they put out there, and I don't know how that's turning out. It seemed to get very much information.
And there's one other thing, just we're in the public meeting. I was tonight. I'm going to go talk to the what do they call it? The community panel on. So there with Bureau of Land Management, they have a public forum.
Okay.
And it's a lot of different interests, from four-wheel drive to habitat.
Oh, yeah, that's that one committee. Sharon, my wife, used to sit on that for a while. I forget what it's called.
It's a public
yeah.
forum, lands forum.
Yeah, and the city has a representative and people.
But in doing that, I think it's worth mentioning that BLM has out on their website that the GA has provided them a bunch of documentation, and there's a 30-day public comment period on I believe the proposed route of the pipeline.
Okay.
And those interested parties need to make comments by the 4th of November.
Mm-hmm.
So these primarily, I think these will be environmental groups and natural resource groups that will be looking at that. And but it's always good to mention these kind of things to the general public when you have the opportunity. There's the GA is moving forward. We received a request to have some, I think, potholing done on some property that we had from BLM as well. So that project is marching along down the regulatory path, and those comment periods are significant. If you miss your opportunity, you don't get to speak up later.
I do know that one of the members of one of the tribes up from Lone Pine came to the meeting where they were talking about the CEQA and the FEQA, and such, and said, we haven't heard anything about this. And that area you're going to be out there, we know for a fact, and other things were done, that it ended up, there are artifacts and everything out there. So hopefully they'll be represented tonight. I know they're very interested in being involved in any of this, even if you're potholing or doing anything, they want to be there, because those areas they're coming through could have artifacts.
No, that's right. You look at that piece of property was essentially future offset property that we had.
No, it wasn't.
Was it?
The letter we got is regarding the pipeline alignment, which concerns just that short section where our tank is, that's Kendall, right?
Okay, so it's basically where the pipeline's gonna come.
Where it's
across
gonna
our-
come in
It's gonna
to
connect, okay.
to the future
Yeah.
tank.
Well,
That's
thank you for
all.
clarifying that.
Because we have an easement there for a pipeline, so.
Is that the tank off of Brady and the highway right there?
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
Or Ridgecrest Heights.
That's where I want to build another tank and another chlorination station or whatever they want to
So
do.
it might be appropriate for us to make public comments on that with respect to flushing, where does the flushing water go, and all those other impacts that might occur, in that particular area, because particularly right there, how's it gonna tie in, if it does tie in, I think the estimate now is something like 15 acre feeder in the pipe. If it shuts down for an extended period of time, that water's gotta go somewhere. That's a lot of water. So, there's certainly things we wanted to bring up, because we would certainly wanna see that water put to beneficial use, not just go somewhere. So that should be included in their plans as well, so.
And one of the biggest part of that plan, obviously, is that financing from the government. If that doesn't get written into the request, then they've already said that, then they don't know how to do the pipeline.
Yeah, we always go under the presumption that they will be successful in getting their funding,
Yeah.
and that we will have to, we have to plan for every contingency.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're doing. That's not an endorsement of the pipeline by any means. It's just it's a matter of fact. They're moving forward, and we have to be cognizant of that, and on our end, be prepared and understand and make appropriate comments should it come.
All right. Anything else? Mike, this gentleman has been gone for so long, I almost forgot what he looked like.
I've seen him on TV before. I've watched
Oh,
some of the
okay.
previous
That
public
was so
meetings.
exciting.
So I'm not as familiar with you. I'm more familiar with you probably than you are with me. I'm George Cole,
Yeah.
new general manager.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
We'll be discussing things, I'm sure. So I think we're still on number 7, alternate water sources.
Yes.
And so, heard Ty say there's no budget for looking at the El Paso Basin water. I think the board should put some money into pursuing that. There, as I recall, it's been a while since I was here and there was numbers thrown out, but I believe they were talking potential of 1,000, maybe 2,000 acre feet, to come out of there that what we're not getting right now. I mean, we need to find out. Even if it's just 1,000, that's what, half of the basic allocation that we're getting, that we're having to shell out. Somebody's shelling out $7-something per 100 cubic foot
Yeah.
for. If we get to what they're going to call, I hate the word, but just call it sustainability for the district, then it's like, well, we don't need any water out of the pipeline. We're good, and it's all here in the basin, in the area. That's a preferred solution when we need to tie down. I've heard Don Decker say, well, there's really not. It varies a lot, and it's just a little bit here and a little bit there. Varies a lot with here, but we need to define it. So we know what could be gotten out of there, and what does it take. If you just got to pump it up a little bit to get over a hill and flow it downhill, then that's easy water acquisition.
I'm not a geologist, but I believe that area is the one that's separated from the rest of our reservoir by a fault. And so
Yeah.
the argument is that's what I thought. So the argument is that a lot of it doesn't get here. And that's what Don Decker's saying, because it never seeps through all that bedrock through the fault. So where does it go? It's either used by the people that are tapping it right now, which aren't a lot up there. There's a couple wells that are producing up there, if that. And then as it fills, that's why I say, when it overfills, it's spilling into the other aquifer. So the argument would be, if I was GA, would say, well, that's not really new water. So we're going to consider that as part of our aquifer, and even though you may be taking water from there, you're still taking water out of the overall aquifer. Although I don't know, and Stan would know the answer to this, if they actually do an analysis up there each year to see whether it's part of the analysis of what's happening with the levels of our aquifer. And I don't see how, because I'm not sure they have a lot of monitoring in that area up there.
I will say this though, to your point, one other thing that I think is really worth looking at and buttresses your argument is the fact that we have large concentrations of wells in relatively small areas, and even part of the GA, their plan says that we should look at, spreading the wells out and moving the, and just redistributing it. And because the GA is so focused on these shallow wells, if we could relocate some of our pumping, which would be expensive and would cost our customers money, that's a tough deal, but it could certainly be a big step towards mitigating some of these shallow well issues that we think by doing with the, that spreading out. And I think that in of itself is a good reason to do what you've suggested, and I've sort of started reading a little bit about this, but I like the comment. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I mean, I think your hydrologist consultants can
Yeah.
tell you everything you could possibly want to know about that.
It's gonna boil
good
down
idea.
to money, as I
yeah.
look at Ty. Because if you look at here, there's basically three things that could cost money. One is handling the LADWP aqueduct releases. It depends on what the negotiations might look like. The recycle water definitely could be a large capital project and operation cost.
Oh, yeah.
And anything that falls under alternate water sources, whether it be that one or anything else we might have in mind. And none of those have been talked about putting together any figures or costs and fitting into the budget yet. But they need to be, and
Yeah,
that's what
it's
we're
time.
working towards, yeah. All right, any callers out there? None? Okay. Anything for the future on the agenda that you want to add, take off? All right, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 3:38. Yeah, I looked up, set that clock up there.